You're listening to the History Things Podcast, a conversational approach to discussing social, industrial, maritime, music, and military history. Join us and our special guests as we dive down the rabbit hole of your favorite stories from the past. Follow the guys on social media by searching at the History Things Podcast. Be sure to leave a review and a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app. Matt and Pat are coming right up. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoy the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the History Things Podcast. I'm your co-host, Pat McGuire. Very excited to be here today. Getting into a fun one here. Mid-August, you know what that means. Usually old Pat McGuire pulls the storyteller card and we're going back to the beach. So before we get there, I got to introduce who's with me here in the War Department studio. Friendly voices, friendlier faces. Ladies and gentlemen, you know him as the co-host with the most, the guy who is the most splendiferous park ranger, author, and historian you've ever met. Obviously, we've had to chill on the CIA stuff. We know he's not a spy, mainly because they came in here and stormed the studio. But, of course, I'm talking about none other than Matt Borders, Matty B. How are you, buddy? Welcome to the show.
Always a pleasure to be here, Pat. Good to be back in the studio with you and our producer, Parker's here.
Parker's also on the mic. Say, hey, Parker, how are you, buddy?
Hey, how's it going? Pretty
It's going good. That was softer
great
than
energy.
usual. Yeah, like usually I'm like waiting, like I'm cowering. I'm like, God, here comes all this energy, and that was pretty chill. Like, you having a good summer?
I'm having a very chill summer.
All right.
I've been driving around the History Machine.
Yes, we have been very excited to hear about the exploits of the minivan.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
you're not cool until you actually have a minivan. We used to think it was the opposite.
Yeah.
If you have one, you're not cool. Nay. If you have a minivan, you're awesome in our book.
And in a few days, I get to take the minivan back to the land of my birth.
Oh, you're heading...
Going to Maine?
I am going to Maine.
Wow.
All right.
My first trip back in 8 years.
In 8 years?
Yes.
All this talk on this show, and you haven't been there in nearly a decade?
I'm going back to stock
Do you
up.
even count to be a Maine
For
anymore?
shame.
If you guys have been listening, to the show, I have been referring to myself as a Marylander now more and more
That's
frequently.
true. You guys both did it in a recent episode.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
We're not here today to talk about our state allegiances. Everybody, of course, knows Maryland is the best state in the Union, so it's
Right.
not even up for debate. But we are here today to talk about something a little outside of the box, and I know that we say that a little more than we probably should because we say outside the box, and the thing we talk about is absolutely in the box of what we're interested in. But this one, we're going to challenge you all to see how far your concept of discussing history can go. So, we are here today to talk about one of my irrational fears, fellas. And if you know me well, you know I have basically only two, gray aliens and mega tsunamis. I'm talking like the ones you see in Deep Impact, The Abyss, other films like that. And I can tell you we're not here today, gentlemen, to discuss the gray alien. In fact, if you want to hear us discuss potentially a gray alien, you might just have to tune in next season on the show. We'll see. But right now, we are here to discuss not even my fear of the mega tsunami, but we are here to discuss the mega tsunami. And I wanted to start by just simply asking a question, right? Like, why mega tsunamis? Like, what makes a historical event? Is it the diary entry, the primary source documentation, newspapers of the day, eyewitness accounts? First, I start by asking you, Parker. What makes an event historical?
It's a great question. I would say that it probably is based upon a couple of factors. I would say probably its uniqueness.
All right.
And probably that uniqueness in relation to how it stopped, changed, or affected a historical event in some way.
Ooh, I like that. Matt, when you think of something like making something codified as a historical event, what sort of definitions, parameters, whatever, do you need for it to apply?
Primarily, its impact and how it affects the rest of the world around it. So we've had many historical events in our lifetimes, be it pandemics or other things, and we can see those ripple effects and how they've
we've had
affected society.
many historical events in the last 5 years.
That's right.
Like, we are entering some weird space. So, yeah, but you're right. Like, so we have a very clear understanding, especially as it relates to a lot of the things we're personally interested in when you're covering politics, society, war, things like that.
Right.
There's really easy to define historic moments through like the things I mentioned, your eyewitness accounts, your documentation, your public society context like newspapers. But what about the events that we can all agree most rational people can agree definitely occurred, and yet no one was around to witness or record the event in real time? Like, what about these? We have looked to the past before, and we have used things like science to confirm history, especially things from the distant past, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So this episode is partly the History Things podcast, and also our favorite joke on the show coming a little more realized. This is partly the Science Things podcast today. Now, let's get started really quick with the definition, just making something kind of clear to our audiences. First of all, before we get into this, fellas, Megatsunamis. Am I the only one that's irrationally afraid of them? Matt, I don't think I've ever heard a story that you tell that starts with, so I was at the beach. But I know you go to the beach, Parker.
Yeah, every now and then, yeah.
So when you're standing there, toes in the sand, feeling like Jimmy Buffett, because let's be real.
Or the Zach Brown Band.
Yeah, or the Zach Brown Band with Jimmy Buffett.
With Jimmy Buffett. With Alan Jackson.
Great
song. On the Gretel or something.
Oh, man, if Jimmy was alive, that would be a concert I would aspire to go to, just to see those guys like be island together.
Oh,
anyway.
Oh.
But when you're standing on the beach, Parker,
Yes.
have you ever had that super macabre thought of, here comes the 2,000-foot wave, man? Like, what if I was standing here?
I actually have.
Yeah, because you're a human. I feel like most
I've-
people have that
I've
thought.
seen those waves out like in the distance. You know how it looks, how some of those waves look like when they get to the shore, they're going to be like, total monsters.
Right.
And by the time they get there, they're nothing.
Yeah.
and then you have these little waves that are like, a couple inches high, and then all of a sudden they're like, rawr.
Matt.
Now we're the sound effects things.
Yeah, no, dude. When you're not sitting in your normal production chair, the audio engineer kind of goes up in scale because that was classy. When you are, first of all, are all your beach stories Great Lake stories, Matt?
I have been to both oceans and the Gulf.
All right, rub it in. No. When you're standing on the beach, do you have, similar, like every once in a while, do you allow yourself that very human, like, what if the wave came?
Nope.
Really?
No, my fears in regard to open water have to do with what's under it.
Oh, I mean, dude,
that makes
for
sense.
sure.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of I'm fine with not being able to see the bottom, but I'm still going to think about what could be down there.
Like between you and the bottom?
Right,
Oh,
exactly.
Absolutely. One of the greatest personal panic attacks I've ever had occurred in this bay right outside Ocean City, New Jersey, where I fell off a wave runner and then suddenly realized there was a significant distance between me and the bottom, and the water is dark. I was like, oh no, Jersey Devil in the water. Maybe he's got a scuba tank. Who knows? All right, so you don't think about the wave. You think
Not
about the
generally,
monsters
no.
of the deep.
Exactly.
Which is metal as all hell, and probably an episode we might come to in the future just because it does intersect with history. With you consider how we're accidentally a maritime-themed podcast at times. Sailors do have tons of stories, including one of our World War I guys we like to talk about, King George, as a younger man, claimed to have seen the Flying Dutchman.
Flying Dutchman, yep.
So, maybe there's an episode about the monsters of the deep in the future, but today's episode we're going to talk about megatsunamis, and I'm going to kind of focus on some historical megatsunamis just for context. We're not here to discuss the science of them, but mainly here to tell you a few stories about times in the past where this happened. So defining a megatsunami is pretty simple. It's a very large wave that is created by a large, sudden displacement of water because material went into it. It's not just because an earthquake occurred. It's because something like an asteroid impact happened, or a massive landslide, or the pyroclastic flow of a erupting volcano. Right. Yeah. So megatsunamis, again, they have different features. From an ordinary tsunami. An ordinary tsunami, they're caused by just straight up underwater tectonic activity or the movement of the Earth's tectonic plates, and therefore these really only occur along the plate boundaries and strictly as a result of earthquakes. The subsequent rise and fall of the sea floor, things like that, it does displace water, but there is only going to be a finite amount of displacement. I don't know that I'm saying that right, but when you think about recent tsunamis we've seen in Sumatra and in Japan in the last 20 years.
I was going to say, Fukushima, that had a tsunami attached to it too, didn't it?
Yes, and a terrible one, much like the one in Sumatra where honestly, the Sumatra tsunami we're not going to be covering today because that is a traditional tsunami. But it is, that tsunami specifically is the worst one in recorded history, I think, off the top of my head. And then the Fukushima one we got to watch live on television.
Right.
Which was, I don't want to say equally bad, but I will say, just because I don't want to appear like I'm not being reverent, I mean, that was a devastating moment for humanity, the people of Japan, things like that. But that wave, I think in both instances, these waves achieved heights that were somewhere between like 40 feet and 100 feet. Massive.
Yeah.
Massive waves. But let's be very honest, in Portugal, people surf 100-foot waves. So just for context, this is, even though it is an awe-inspiring moment of the power of nature, it is something that mankind has at times been able to tame in a way.
Or at least roll with.
Roll with, right. So that's probably a better way of saying it. But a mega tsunami is its whole different kettle of fish, as Matt likes to say, because there are external things other than just the earthquake involved. So ordinary tsunamis, they exhibit shallow waves in deep waters and open ocean, where Matt is afraid of things underwater.
It's true.
And they increase dramatically upon running up to the shore. So that's kind of standard tsunami 101. By contrast, mega tsunamis, they occur when a large amount of material suddenly falls into the water or anywhere near the water, again, such as a landslide, meteor impact, or a volcanic eruption. They can have extremely large initial wave heights in the hundreds or thousands of feet, far beyond the height of any ordinary tsunami.
And can you stop right there for a second? I want you to think for a second about a word you just said, and it's probably a word that we're going to say a couple of times tonight.
Is it 1,000?
Thousands of feet.
Yeah.
I mean,
bro. You want to? I'll just say it now for 1,000 times. I'm equal parts Tay Leone and her father in Deep Impact, standing on the ocean with that 3,000-foot wave coming in, stoic and totally afraid.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, the concept is.
I mean, that's just a number. We say sometimes, like we do this with history, we do this with any hobby. We say numbers, like we talk about Antietam and how many people died, and it's like, oh yeah, what is it? 26,000 people?
Nearly 23,000 killed, wounded, missing in action.
I think it's like, what, 4 to 6? 4 outright?
It's
something like
4,600, they believe, was killed outright.
And that's a number that's so big and said so frequently that we forget how big that number actually is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
when I guess my challenge, and not to try to scare anyone in our audience here, but my challenge is when we're talking about these numbers, think about what those numbers actually really represent. Think about a foot. Think about 100 feet. Think about what 1,000 feet looks like.
Think about the World Trade Center.
That's longer than the Titanic. What Titanic's 882 feet long.
Here we go. That was probably
I'm just saying,
record time to get to our ship.
Well, no, I'm just saying the Lusitania, Titanic. These are ships that people measure things by. Right.
That's true.
We're talking waves longer than that.
Dude, we're talking waves taller than the World Trade Center. We're talking waves taller than the Burj Khalifa in Dubai.
So just when you think that mankind has built something that can tame nature,
Mother Nature says no.
Mother Nature says, "Hold my beer."
Nay.
And can absolutely
Mother
own
Nature's
you
classy.
at any time.
True.
So I just
before we move on, just a quick aside, because you did mention your favorite ship girl there. We are recording this on the day that Carpathia meets its tragic end in the First World War. So, just a little inside baseball. We're recording this on July 17th. July 17th, 1918. Carpathia is hit 3 times by torpedoes and founders off the coast of Ireland. So. If you're always looking for us to get back to that subject, well, there it is. We found our way. So anyway, getting back into it.
Real quick, Pat, in regards to the science of it, a tsunami, people talk about tsunamis when they're coming in, the water draws back into the ocean and then rolls in. But with a mega tsunami being a huge displacement of water, do we see that drawing of the water?
I think you will see it because these waves grow continuously. Like the tsunami has a kind of out to sea. It's relatively stable in the sense. That's what they were kind of describing.
Sure.
Like low waves in open water, and then as the topography underneath it shallows, the wave then grows.
Right.
These waves are tall immediately, and then because of the displacement, the upward thrust, in fact, literally the next sentence on my little thing here says, these giant wave heights occur because the water is splashed upwards and outwards by the displacement. So when that happens, there is this wall of water that's instantly formed. It's instantly massive, and it's sucking up millions of gallons of water along the way, growing what is already huge.
Well, that's horrifying.
No, absolutely. So
Our goal tonight is to actually make Matt. We're actually trying to make you scared of him.
he's like, I was only afraid of the open and underwater, but now I'm just going to avoid the coast entirely.
Exactly. Going back to my Great Lakes, damn it.
Yes, we want you
right.
listening to this episode as you're driving to your nice beach vacation. So anyway, examples of modern tsunamis include some cool prehistoric ones. The Storegga slide, which is the largest known submarine landslide, was a series of 3 landslides that occurred on the edge of Norway's continental shelf in the aptly named Norwegian Sea. And that occurs approximately
I didn't
between...
see that one coming.
You didn't?
No.
No? No.
Sorry.
Humans, super original when naming things.
Yeah, historians are great at it.
That's right. So approximately, that landslide series occurs between, I'd say, 6200 and 6100 BCE. The collapse is going to involve an estimated 180 miles of the coastal shelf itself.
Wow.
With a total displacement volume of 840 cubic miles of debris. So we're talking just absolute carnage. This is called a paleo tsunami. A paleo tsunami, basically, short version is anything that's before recorded history exists. So that's kind of a neat one just to get started. That's a massive tsunami. There's not a lot of information about it other than that it happened, and the Norwegian.
Where did it go? Did it crush Europe?
It
or?
crushed basically Norway.
Okay.
And then there's not record of what happened in the other direction.
Got it.
I wish I had more on that one. I let off with that just because that was kind of the first one I came up with. Right. You'd be surprised things I'm not going to mention in this episode.
I believe
Atlantis was not one.
I believe
but
it.
damn, I should have.
Welcome to the Atlantis.
The ones that I'm going to focus on, basically, so here's how this episode is going to work. I have a few examples of mega tsunamis I'm going to talk about. I have a few honorable mentions, and then we'll talk a little bit about the future.
Nice.
Ominously. Let's say it a little more deeply.
Are you telling me that you know the future of tsunamis?
The future.
The future.
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
Oh, okay. All right. I
But
can't wait.
I don't know what that means. But all right, so let's get started with the ones I'm going to kind of focus on really quick. The Chicxulub event, which is, of course, the asteroid that takes out the dinosaurs. We usually focus on the asteroid and the fact that the dinosaurs died.
I focused on the fact that it set North America on fire. That's
Yeah.
what usually gets me.
Right, but there was a wave. We're going to talk about the Chesapeake Bay crater, the El Tanin, or El Tanin, I'm sorry, enunciation escapes me, but a massive event that occurs off the southwest coast of South America, northeast. It's sort of in that land between that part of South America and Antarctica. And then we're going to talk about something a little more recent than that, because one thing that those examples all have in common is they are millions of years ago.
I was actually going to ask you about that one you just mentioned. I may save. I don't know. I'll ask you now. That one you mentioned in South America. I'm assuming that's post continental drift.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Again,
yes.
I mean.
According to the great historical text Ice Age, continental drift, I believe that is correct.
I mean, that is a historical document.
Don't shake your head at me. You know that was a great reference. Have you seen it? Have
No.
you seen the original Ice Age?
I think I saw the original, yes.
All right. At least you're in the club. You know the squirrel, Scrat, got his little acorn finally at the
Yes,
end of all things?
I have
then he
seen
caused
that
the
clip.
continental-
Things we didn't know we needed in a world on fire,
Yes.
seeing Scrat get the acorn. It was like, ah, yes. All right, so let's get started with the big one, the Chicxulub event. The Chicxulub event was an asteroid about 6 miles in diameter. It struck planet Earth. Boom! Approximately 66 million years ago. Remember when we grew up and it was 65 million years?
That's
You
because
know,
I'm
I was
really
just thinking
old.
that the other day.
We're getting old, boys. 66 million years went by just like that.
Wow.
Anyway, so it's going to leave a crater that's estimated to be about 120 miles across in diameter and about 12 miles deep. The impact created a paleo tsunami, like we just referenced, so a massive wave before recorded history. And this wave is going to reach heights, according to the traditional narrative, of heights in excess of 3,000 feet.
Damn.
And is considered to have been the cause of the mass extinction event that resulted in the sudden wipeout of 75% of all plant and animal species on Earth, including all non-avian dinosaurs. Which, that one kind of trips me out because sharks and alligators exist, and I'm not sure of their connection, but if you think about the fact that birds are all descended from like raptors and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or the birds aren't real, man.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, the birds, man. No, we're not doing
The
that.
Conspiracy Things podcast, sponsored in part by
Birds are real, just for the
Birds
record.
Are Real.
Birds are real.
So anyway, so this horrifically violent moment in time, it brings about the end of the Cretaceous period, the one that we're most familiar
Cretaceous.
with. What?
The Crustaceous period,
Yeah.
like under the sea. Bum, bum, bum,
It's
bum.
Cretaceous.
All right.
yes.
Well, thanks for that, Matt.
Yeah.
It's all right.
The
You're right.
pronunciation things podcast is
No,
sponsored
you're
in
right.
part by
I didn't see Matt Flash's badge there for a second.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, grammar police.
the grammar police
Yeah.
are here.
It's,
Anyway.
oh, yeah, I'm the last person for that, but no, it's Cretaceous.
I
You're
thought-
right.
okay,
No,
I'm
you're
glad you
right.
said-
And I'm looking at it, but Crustaceous. Maybe I just want pizza.
Or you're thinking,
I think you're thinking
for
about-
specifically crustaceans.
Like
Or they're
crabs.
crusty because they got burned by the asteroid.
That would
Well,
be
there's
crispy.
Um,
That they were crispy. The crispaceous.
Crispaceous.
So, along with the end of this period is also the overall end of the Mesozoic era, which basically means it's the beginning of the Cenozoic era, which we are now currently living in. So, the asteroid itself was this massive thing that, it changed the world. It wiped out the dinosaurs. It directly installed man. We basically said, we're voting the dinosaurs out of office, and now the men are in. No. It's a lot more
Yes.
complicated than that.
That's how it happened.
But
You heard it on the internet, and that means it's true now.
But that was sort of my first introduction to massive waves because I remember as a kid learning about the Chicxulub event and obviously this rain of fire and the nuclear winter that comes, blah, blah, blah. But this thing makes a water landing in a planet that is almost, majority water.
Right.
I asked, a lot of questions about what that was like, and really good science teachers, did a good job scaring the absolute out of me by describing these waves of extreme heights and speeds and violence and things like that. So I figured we could start it with the familiar one. There's obviously not a lot of information about it unless you're doing a full study on the whole impact event itself, which we're not. I just wanted to talk about the wave for a second. So you don't often think about the fact that when the asteroid comes, that it's more than just the fire and conflagration and nuclear holocaust. It is also this insane tidal wave that I'm sure the Megalodon was like, bro, what is happening here? As he's like swooping through it, like, Kelly Slater, greatest surfer ever. But moving ahead a little bit, by the way, this episode's going to be a nice little sweet, hopefully shorter episode for us. So I'm going to be moving through it quickly, but we're going to move ahead about 30 million years, I'd say.
Oh, just a little.
Just a quick bump
a little
up
bump,
in time.
yeah.
So we'll go from 66 million years to about 35 million years ago with the Megatsunami that's associated with an asteroid or comet impact. That's a lot closer to home, fellas. So I'll ask you one more time. What state are you from? What's the best state? Say it.
Maine.
Say it. Maryland.
We are currently in Maryland.
That's right. Where Maryland is the answer.
I mean, yeah. Maryland is the best.
All right, wise
just
up.
said we're in it.
Wise
Yeah.
up, friend. Of course, I'm talking about the Chesapeake Bay impact event, which occurred, as we were just saying, about 35 million years ago. An asteroid traveling roughly about 144,000 miles per hour smashed into the water near the modern-day town of Cape Charles, Virginia. I guess Virginia can also claim the bay. I always forget that.
You see, this is one I'd never heard of until you told me that this existed.
The Chesapeake one, or that
Yeah,
Virginia can claim the bay?
No, the both.
Yeah.
No, the asteroid thing.
Yeah,
I didn't know about.
I
this.
learned about it, I want to say like in the last 4 years, through the Arrowhead Committee. There's a site that manages, I guess, a lot of the overall Chesapeake Bay region, so they got a single social media presence, and they did a pretty neat post about it. Really cool graphic. Somebody drew a nice little rendering of what they think that scene looked like. But
Wow.
yeah, I was like, oh, like that one's like right in the backyard,
Wow.
So here's what happened. So this asteroid going about 144,000 miles an hour smashes into the water near Cape Charles, Virginia. The space rock is instantly vaporized. So whatever came in and hit wasn't super sound. It was destroyed by the impact and the heat and all the other components in play. But its impact did trigger a gargantuan tsunami, which casted a monsoon of shattered rocks, water, molten glass, and it spanned hundreds of miles, and it carved out the single largest crater in the modern United States. So this is our This is our local Chicxulub style.
So this is
event.
bigger than the one out in Arizona, I'm assuming.
Yes, 100%.
I just want I figured as much. I just wanted to kind of put that in comparison for our listeners at home. Another quick question for you: do we have anything? I know you said it kind of exploded before it basically impacted. Do we have any remnants of this? Like, do we have any like?
Not of the meteorite itself, though. I imagine I could be wrong in that. But essentially, what happens is, due to the material makeup of the sediment and things, the original crater is actually underneath a lot of things now because the fill-in and the deposits over time. So I imagine there's probably something-ish down there, but look, as much as we're doing the Science Things podcast and we're wearing these sweet white lab coats today, boys, I'm not actually a scientist.
Okay.
I just play one on TV.
Okay. All right. I just. Yeah.
So here's what trips me out about this one. And this one really hit home. I've always known this since I learned the story, but this one really hit home in the last couple weeks as I was driving back from Kentucky with my wife. So geographically speaking, the Blue Ridge Mountains at its closest to the Chesapeake Bay is about 90 miles. And there are multiple other places along the Blue Ridge that are impacted as well. But the wave that is created by the Megatsunami that is created by the blast of the event in Chesapeake Bay, again, several thousand feet high. I wasn't able to come across a concrete estimated. That's a weird way to say that, a concrete estimation.
Yeah.
But sort of one that people generally accept. But most
I think
people
officially that's referred to as a guesstimation.
Yes. Most people tend to agree that
Scientifically.
this was similar in wave height to the Chicxulub event, between 2,000 to 3,000 feet. But this wave reaches the Blue Ridge Mountains. And, like, it really hit home because coming back from Kentucky, if you're going the way my wife and I went, you go through the West Virginia, Kentucky border, and you get into the regions where the Appalachians and the Blue Ridge are, and you realize that the wave from this coastal system that is actually very far from the way you consider land reached you. And I cannot imagine what it would have been like to have been sitting, say like where we are right now, where I grew up, things like that. It's like, oh my goodness, like that wave would have rolled over all of Montgomery County, Maryland, all of Frederick, Washington County, Carroll County, like everything I know would have been underwater, from that wave, and including dozens of miles further west. So just a kind of a mind-blowing concept to think about water being projected and running that far inland. So
I wonder how much tonnage of water was also instantly vaporized too by that impact.
That's a great question.
The amount of steam that would have been ejected into the atmosphere, because that's one of the issues with the extinction of the dinosaurs is everything that gets propelled into the atmosphere as well. I'm curious as to how much water would have been coming back down later too.
Maybe next year I'll come back to these stories, but we'll focus on the actual impacts and not just the fact that these things produced massive ass waves. Because that's a great question, and in doing my quick research to get this one together, I can tell you short answer is millions of gallons, quite obviously.
Yeah.
But they are astronomical numbers, and I think it's that thing where your brain just kind of, like you were just alluding to with the desensitization of statistic, like you just see the number and you're like, my God,
Right.
what does that even mean?
Good point.
So, all right. So moving on from, some massive asteroid impacts that are well known and or close to us, we have one that is a lot more recent. So again, we're going to hit that fast forward button, and we're going to go from 66 million to 35 million to now we're only going to go to somewhere between 750,000 years ago and 2.5 million years. I'm not really sure how to pin it down much tighter than that, but that's kind of the window they're giving us for what is known as the Eltanin or Eltanin impact. It's an asteroid impact in the eastern part of the South Pacific Ocean. It occurred in the Pliocene or Pleistocene boundary.
Pleistocene.
What is it?
Pleistocene.
God, I love that. Dude, airplanes, science. What do you not know, buddy?
That's my father's archaeological background
Dude,
coming
is
into
your
play.
dad Indiana Jones?
He tries to be.
Does he have a cool song?
He's got that song.
Nice.
He used to play that at the beginning of his coursework.
Nice, dude, my man. So anyway, so this impact occurs at the north edge of the Bellinghausen Sea, about 950 miles southeast of modern-day Chile, where the seafloor is about 2.5 miles to just about a little over 3 miles deep at that point. What else is 2 miles deep, Parker?
Wreck of the Titanic.
Yeah, okay, good. Just making sure you're on your toes. Making sure
He was
I'm
on
always-
that. Though.
I'm
never
always
miss
ready.
an opportunity.
I just lean into the mic and just casually mention.
So
every
here's a little
Titanic
bit more
fact.
specific for you, Matt. The ocean impact likely evaporated 36 cubic miles of water instantly.
Jesus Christ.
Can you say that again? What?
So imagine just 36 cubic miles of water
Gone.
instantaneously evaporated.
God. It's going to be raining for years.
Dude, yeah, you're not even kidding.
I don't even know. That's. I mean, look. I'm sorry. That's just.
That's the kind of rain we need right now, fellas. At the
It
time
is.
of
It really
recording,
is.
we're in a pretty hardy drought. You could drop a...
Dude, I was two weeks ago.
We're
two
going to need to
weekends
build a
ago.
boat if that happens, though.
Yeah, I know, right? 2 weeks ago, I was at a friend's house, and I went. I had no idea I was going to do this, but I ended up tubing on Antietam on the river.
Oh,
nice.
cool.
And it's very shallow.
The creek,
and
yeah.
my butt just
Oh, you're
is
doing the
still hurting.
scraping along the bottom? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was the first time I'd ever done it, and
It was the last time.
It was
yeah.
no, it was a lot of fun until you hit the rock.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I've done a few
Yeah.
little river river floats and suddenly hit the shallows and been like, this is not what I wanted in this
I mean, I was
experience.
telling the people I was with, I was like, hey, I'm kind of a history guy, and I'm just picturing, Robert E. Lee's troops just floating across the Antietam in these little tubes, and I'm like,
That's how they did it.
This is how they should have done it.
They said
This is what they should have
they
done.
were playing Maryland by Maryland and
Yeah.
passing around beers.
That's what they were. That's what
Now,
they
were
did.
you floating on the Potomac or the Antietam?
Antietam to the Potomac. It was not too far from where Burnside Bridge is.
Right.
And are you familiar with where Burnside?
Yeah,
I just wanna
do
make
you know
sure.
where that is,
Do you know
Matt?
where,
I'm
do you know where
roughly,
Burnside Bridge is?
roughly familiar.
Okay.
A lot of people call it the Burnside Bridge, but it has another name, and it's not really important what
You're
the
right.
real name of the
You're right.
bridge is.
It's actually got two other names.
Yeah,
It does.
Yeah, but
See what I
it's
learned,
this apparently there's this bridge there where like something pretty historically significant happened.
Maybe.
Well, you said you're the history guy for your group. So.
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
So we're like, Parker, what happened here? And you were like,
and I was like, so
nothing.
yeah.
And they just rolled
Some
on.
important stuff.
I was like, well, something pretty significant, but more importantly, they should have just had these, and then that whole invasion would have gone totally different.
All right, so let's talk
Moving on.
about the wave that comes when you have 36 cubic miles of water basically instantaneously evaporating. Today there are shorelines on the Pacific Ocean that are still featuring the erosional features that this large wave came. They include, like I was just saying, erosional surface, chaotic deposits of mixed terrestrial and ocean-derived sediment, so things that came up from the deep because of this massive
Sure.
upblast and displacement
yeah.
of water. Boulders as big as buses are mixed in with marine fossils and mud. Things that wouldn't naturally be in the same places have been all conglomerated together. And Chile is basically the epicenter for the evidence to support that this wave occurred. The most well-documented deposits of this event are all along the Chilean coasts. Off the coast of Antarctica, there are also corresponding mudslides into the deep ocean that would correspond with something hitting it and dragging it down. So,
Well, and that's an interesting thought, Pat, because if we've got this massive wall of water slamming into the coastline, it's going to recede, take a bunch of crap with
Yes.
it. Is that going to start another tsunami going the other direction?
and there's potential for that.
That's another great question.
It is
Yeah.
referenced in several of these prehistoric ones where the wave of the initial impact, not just the sound pressure wave, but the physical water of the Chicxulub event
Right.
traveled the Earth at least twice. Like
Wait.
the amount of water, like it might not have been 3,000 feet the entire way. I'm guessing not,
Now,
but
Pangea is still involved at that time, right?
Right.
So it's
there's a lot
more open
a
water.
lot of highway, so to
Yeah.
speak.
A lot of highway.
Yeah.
So the size of this tsunami from the blast of water that was outwardly projected, the tsunami went, at least it had a running length, they estimate, of 37-mile long wall of water. It made the wave at one point 660 feet high, which I found interesting considering we've had these other episodes that are similar to this where we are reaching the 4 digits, the thousands of
Right.
feet. This one apparently hit in such a way that it created a broader front than normal, but still 660-foot wave.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
You're still not outrun that.
Right.
That's exactly what I was saying. I was like, so we're not outrunning this.
No.
We're
You were
gonna-
going to stand there and be obliterated
Yeah.
by it.
So here's some
Yeah.
cool things I found about this. So again, a wave 660 feet, on the southern end of Chile and on the Antarctic Peninsula. But after 10 hours, waves that are still 115 feet would reach places like Tasmania, Fiji, and Central America. The New Zealand coast would have been a hit with a 200-foot wave.
Bye.
10 hours.
Wait, 10 hours, and this starts in Chile.
Yeah.
And it goes all the way to New Zealand.
Oh, keep that thought. Keep that sort of exasperated thought because we're going to come back to that one big time.
Wow. Okay. All right. Wow.
But ready to get a little currently exasperated, a little baffled perhaps. Because what if I told you that the evidence of megatsunamis occurring is not all prehistoric, but some of them have occurred much, much, much more recently in time?
So we've been hopping forward by millions of years.
We're going to do it again.
Okay.
But at the next story I'm going to tell you, the Civil War has concluded and is 20 years old at this point.
Oh.
In 1883, the loudest sound ever recorded in history.
Oh, is that the explosion?
Of Krakatoa.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes. So the
1880. I would thought Krakatoa might come into this discussion.
Oh, and here it is. You guessed right, Matt. So the 1883 eruption of Krakatoa in the Sunda Strait occurred from May 20th until October 21st, 1883. It was essentially, there are a lot of continuous activity, but there are 3 major explosions, the third of which is the one, which occurs in the late morning hours of August 27th, 1883, when over 70% of the island of Krakatoa and its surrounding archipelago were destroyed as it straight up collapsed into the caldera. So the 70% of the island fell in on itself into the caldera. The eruption was one of the deadliest and most destructive volcanic events in recorded history. It generated a pressure wave that radiated out from Krakatoa at 675 miles an hour. The eruption is estimated to have reached 180 decibels, which was loud enough to have been heard 3,100 miles away. 3,100 miles away.
Wow. So there was another...
Still not as heavy as an AC/DC record, brother.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Crank them tunes up. Put it on 11.
I know what you're saying.
God damn.
There is another that kind of reminded me of that story there. It's not as well known as Krakatoa, certainly not as destructive. But there was another one, the Santorini volcano that exploded out in Greece or in that area.
Yeah.
I know there was a lot of damage with that one, but you're talking about with Krakatoa. You're talking about what would you say? Probably like double of the Santorini explosion, right?
I'm not familiar with that one enough to give you a double or not, but I know I've heard of it and I know it was destructive. But I mean,
it took most of the island with it.
Let's be very real. What the event we're talking about right now produced the loudest sound ever heard on planet Earth, and that's including the fact that we have detonated thermonuclear weapons and hydrogen bombs at this point, and those are still not registered as loud as what this bang was. Some things that'll be kind of fun to mention here. Let's see if I wrote them down. Let me just move through here because I don't want to skip it just in case I did write it. If I get through my little script here in a second and I don't mention it, I got a nice little tidbit for you about the absolute insanity of this blast. So, all right. So massive tsunamis from this massive radiation of pressure. They hit the water. The pyroclastic flow is also hitting the water. And they create these massive tsunamis that inundate the coastlines of the Sunda Strait, and they are entirely submerging some of the islands that are a part of this chain out there. So islands are straight up just disappearing. And again, the first 2 explosions are going to produce very large mega tsunamis. We're focusing on this one because this is a 79-foot wall of water instantly, and then it turns into a 138-foot wave by the time it ends up hitting Java and Sumatra, which are not super close. So, a significant distance. I actually have an account of this one. Ready?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So the Loudon, which at the time was anchored near the village of Titok Batong. I guess the Loudon is a ship. It survived the waves, and passengers on the wave produced this account. Quote, "Suddenly we saw a gigantic wave of prodigious height advancing towards the seashore with considerable speed. Immediately the crew managed to set sail in the face of imminent danger. The ship had just enough time to meet the wave from the front. The ship met the wave head-on, and the Loudon was lifted up with dizzying rapidity and made a formidable leap. The ship rode at a high angle over the crest of the wave and down the other side. and the wave continued on its journey toward land. The benumbed crew watched as the sea in a single sweeping motion consumed the town. There, where an instant before had lain the town of Telok Betong, nothing remained but the open sea. So they watched one of these waves just swallow a town completely. Okay, here it is. So away from the coast of the Sunda Strait, the waves are going to reach heights pretty humbly of 13 feet, but we're talking at that point on the other side of the planet.
Dude, a human is about 6 feet tall.
I'll also be real. A
That's
13-foot wave along the coast is what people think 40-foot waves on the coast look like.
Yeah.
Right.
Like when you see a huge ass, you should have caught that wave, bro. They're like 7 feet.
Right. Right.
Like in excess of 10 feet, your brain starts to wonder if you're in trouble.
I mean,
because you don't realize
13 feet is not twice as high as
your average
human.
coastal waves break between 3 and 5 feet if they're nice, right?
Right.
So anyway, one person was killed in Sri Lanka. Ships as far away as South Africa were rocked as tsunamis hit them. Victims' bodies were found floating in the ocean for months after this event. And the tsunamis that accompanied the eruption were believed to have been caused by, like I was saying, the pressure wave and these gigantic pyroclastic flows entering the sea. Now, this caused the several cubic miles of material entering the sea, displacing the water. It's what creates these. So I didn't write it in my notes. So there are English sailors that are on naval ships and an RMS line that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. Forgive me, despite all of our research. We should be experts on that by now. But they are, I think, the closest ship that reports in with effects is over 600 miles away, and soldiers have had their ears blown out from the Krakatoa sound.
Are you? Wow.
Just to show you.
They've had their ears blown out.
Yeah, just to show you how impactful that sound was. Wow. Now, we are going to go a lot further into our lives than the 1883 Krakatoa event. We're going to spend some time talking about something that occurred in our parents' lifetimes in 1958 in Lituya Bay, Alaska. And now we'll jump around in time with this story a little bit because there's some evidence that this is not the first time this happened, but this story I'm about to tell is kind of the reason why I wanted to do this episode.
Okay.
Because the concept of an asteroid hitting the Earth and this major tsunami, it's kind of old hat if you've watched any, disaster film in your life. Right. And I was like, cool, that would be neat, but what if I told you that in 1958 there was a wave that reached a run-up height of 1,720 feet?
I'd say tell me more, Pat.
Right.
Yeah, right.
That's the right answer, Parker. So Lituya Bay is a...
Go on.
Yeah, tell me more.
Yeah.
So Lituya Bay is a T-shaped bay. It's located in a very, very geologically active region of Alaska where a major fault line known as the Fairweather Fault exists. And it's approximately 13 miles southeast of the bay itself. So the fault and the bay are basically neighbors. In 1958, a strike-slip earthquake is going to occur. That is a completely horizontally based earthquake. And it's going to produce quakes that reach magnitudes of 7.8 to 8.3 on the Richter scale. So big ones.
Okay. 8.3 on the Richter scale.
Yeah, buddy.
The Oakland of our lifetime.
San Francisco
San Francisco. That one was
9.
That was 9?
I thought that was 9.
Okay, I thought it was less than that.
So I can do some quick research as we're doing that and come back to it.
That could have, you might be right actually now, but still 8 point something. That's
well, Fukushima, for instance, was I believe somewhere between a 7 and a 7.5.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And it produced one of the worst human events in history.
So we're looking at that type of seismic activity.
And the minimal decimals between 7.8 and 8.3 are tremendously exponential in power.
Now, are you talking about the 1989?
I was talking about 89, but I know the one
that Al Michaels, yeah.
Yeah, the one that happened during the
World Series.
Yeah, World Series.
So the magnitude on that there's a little bit of discrepancy, but the Google for the quick search
for the win.
is
Dr.
coming up
Google.
anywhere from 6.9 to 7.2.
Oh,
That's what,
okay.
that's
So
what
maybe
I
I'm
thought.
thinking of the 1906
I think you're thinking
one?
of the 1908 one or 6 one, whatever one, yeah.
I thought one of them was a 9. And it was
I
just
think
like,
I think you might be right.
1906 is believed to have been estimated at 7.9 with as high as 8.25.
Okay, so first of all, I'm always wrong on this show. Secondly, maybe it's the future one is going to be a 9 when the San Andreas Fault slips. Maybe that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah. So, but just for context, for those of us who were alive in 1989, that devastation that happened with the Oakland Bridge that same level with the bridge and all the damage that happened that we witnessed as kids on the news. Old farts like
It
me
scared
and
me.
Matt. Yeah, and probably you're
I
so young you
remember
don't.
it.
You remember? Okay.
I was super wee, but dude, it's one of the first things I remember.
No, isn't it? It wasn't that. I mean, just think about it. So that devastation is what we're talking about with this Alaska one.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So, and it's
But we're talking
producing-
about worse in the sense, maybe not the
Well,
same
I know what you
physical, like
mean.
visible devastation, but power.
Right,
The
power,
power of the earthquake,
yeah.
yes.
I mean, think about how much worse that would have been if what did you say, 1,700-foot wave?
Yeah, like 1,720 foot wave.
Can you imagine if a wave that big hit Oakland at that time? You know,
Well,
what
I've
I mean?
seen the
Like,
movie San Andreas, brother. I know what it looks like. The
Yeah.
Rock saves our life.
But this is I hate interjecting like that sometimes, but I want these stories are so interesting.
Yeah.
That I just like. I want people to realize that this stuff is like. It's not that long ago, and I know you're talking about it now, and I know you're bringing it to the future. But like, we talk about these events, you know, that took out the dinosaurs. We talk about these events that happened in Crab State, but no, I mean these things, you know, these are things like they're modern.
Yep.
They're still happening.
All right.
This can happen.
Are you ready?
At any time. All right, yeah.
Are you ready?
That's yeah. Go ahead.
All right, so strike slip earthquake. So it's moving laterally. It's going side to side. It's going to occur along this fair weather fault. And again, it's going to be from the Pacific plate moving against the North American plate. So if we've been paying attention, why am I talking about this as a mega tsunami if all we've got is just an earthquake? Because it can't be just an earthquake. Otherwise, that's just a regular tsunami.
Landslide.
That's right. So the sudden release accumulated along the fault caused intense ground shaking and displacement. The intensity of the shaking caused the ground to destabilize along the slopes of Lituya Bay, particularly in the area of the Gilbert Inlet. This led to a massive landslide of rocks, Matt, just like you nailed it there. Rocks and soil. And here's where the numbers go a little wonky. Measuring approximately 40 million cubic yards, which weighs about 90 million tons, all fell into the bay in a single swoosh. The enormous volume of material displaced created a huge mega tsunami. The mega tsunami reached an unprecedented height of 1,720 feet as it surged up the slopes on the opposite side of the bay. The wave, just for clarity, talking about how we can compare things, was comparable to a 172-story building. World Trade Center had about 110.
Oh,
Right. So
man.
did it reach that height potentially because it's isolated to the bay?
I think yes, and also because of the amount of just initial drop into the water. Because
Right.
this basically formed as this massive wall and moved across, as we're going to learn. Lituya Bay is a very narrow fjord. So it didn't have too far to go, so its peak height was still relatively intact when it slammed into the opposing rock wall.
Right.
I'm
How much of the opposing fjord did it take down?
Everything. I mean, literally everything that's on the other side is gone. And they talk about the trim line and how it just ripped everything off the side. The only thing that's left on the other side is the rock face
so just
of
for
Lituya Bay.
just for geographical, just so I can wrap my head around it.
Yep.
Is this heading towards Russia, or is this heading inland towards
It's
Alaska?
heading towards Russia.
So it's heading towards. So
But
it
we
drops
can't see
in.
Russia from where we are. It's not that part of Alaska.
Okay, so it's down. It's nice.
That was a good
so
job.
That was a good
job.
one. I wondered if that.
Thank you. That was a good
job. I was that's great. So, but if, but is it? But you know what I'm saying? It's
going to head out to sea. But the geographical features of this come into play, which is why this is a localized event, and you'll see here.
okay.
So
okay.
the wave, again, reaches this unprecedented height, 172-story size wave, 172-story building size wave. And unfortunately, as you would expect in a wave like this, several people on the bay are going to perish. But ready for this, despite the size of the wave, there are only 5 recorded losses of life.
Is it just so isolated?
Yes, and it's an area that is still relatively isolated, but this is 1958's version of isolationism,
Sure.
so there's even less
Yeah.
people. This might have been 5 of the 8 people that lived out there. I'm speaking
in Alaska.
I am speaking hyperbolically, but
Right.
yes, in all of Alaska.
Yeah.
2 people are on a fishing boat. They died when the wave just obliterated them.
Yeah, I would imagine.
The other 3 confirmed dead that were along the shoreline. They had nowhere to go. One was standing right in the middle of this small little fisherman village, and the village was wiped out completely. But remarkably, there are people that survive this wave. And there's an account of a fishing boat captain and his 7-year-old son who were struck by the wave when the wave was somewhere between 500 and 800 feet in height. And they had just the right sweet spot angle and moment that they are going to ride over the swell of this wave.
No thanks.
Yep.
Yeah.
No thanks.
I don't like roller coasters to begin with.
No.
That's
So in Yakutat, and again, if you are from this area of the world or you're just savvy with the pronunciation of things up there, I apologize. I may or may not have butchered that, but in Yakutat, which is the only permanent settlement, so just to give you an idea of how isolated, they're talking about permanent settlements versus what's out on the bay. The infrastructure there suffers tremendously from the quake and the remnants of the wave. So there are bridges, docks, oil lines are all going to sustain damage. A wave tower is completely collapsed. A cabin that it was pretty notable at the entrance to the inlet is just completely disintegrated. Sand boils, which I'm not exactly sure of. I probably, for the sake of this episode, should have explored that a little more. But sand boils and fissures are going to occur along the entire southeast coast of there. And underwater cables that support the Alaska communication system to essentially the rest of the world are cut.
Yeah.
So this wave essentially destroys everything that it touches and cuts off Lituya Bay and its region from essentially the rest of the world. Now, lighter damage from this incident, corresponding smaller waves and seismic activity are going to be reported in Alaskan cities such as Pelican or Sitka. It's going to rip off the limbs of trees and sweep away many, we're talking dozens of miles outside of this region. So forget the bay and the topography I'm going to cover in a minute. This impact was so close to the coast in general that waves, maybe not tsunami size, but massive waves were generated along the ocean coast, and they dispersed and created their own damage. So this event, this isolated earthquake causes a massive megatsunami and subsequent other giant waves that spread out this incredible destruction. So that's sort of the initial story here. So the people who were within Lituya Bay and the surrounding area at the time reported hearing the landslide as a loud roar as the mass of rock and ice collapsed into the bay. And then there was a second thunderous explosion as the debris hit the water.
Right.
So anyway, 50 miles, boys, is the range of audio experience for this. So 50 miles from the bay itself.
That's still pretty loud.
People could hear the earthquake's landslide begin. They could hear the impact of it hitting the water. They could hear the roar of the wave itself as it impacted the other side of the fjord.
And you probably don't have tons of an acoustic shadow or anything out in the open sea.
No, and we're actually going to talk about the acoustics and things like that here.
Oh, good. Oh, great.
So anyway, this sound is really indicative of the tremendous energy that was released during the landslide, and the efficiency with which the sound traveled can be directly attributed to the mountainous and fjord-like terrain. So essentially, it was like a microphone. It blasted because it narrows towards the open ocean, and it widens as you go inland. So the sound blasts inland more than outwardly, out to sea.
I could see that.
So as the Megatsunami surged through Lituya Bay, additional sounds from the water impacting the shore and crashing into the obstacles that it was hitting could be heard. The mountainous terrain and fjord-like terrain, as we just covered, really heavily influenced the sound. And when you think about it, what does what does a 1,700 plus foot wave do? As Matt was asking a moment ago, it's going to absolutely decimate everything. It's going to strip even the vegetation and soil from areas, and some of these areas were nearly 2,000 feet above the water line. So what they call it a trim line, and you can see these in almost any lake, ocean, river scene. These high water marks where the water becomes powerful and kind of just blitzes away whatever's there. Well, the trim line on Lituya Bay is just above 1,700 feet. Jesus. Yep. And what's interesting, I guess more interesting than just that kind of baffling concept, is that this trim line existed before 1958.
Oh, that's a scary thought.
That is interesting. Wow.
So this type of wave has happened in Lituya Bay before. And so this is where we'll jump around a little bit. So the first evidence of a mega tsunami in Lituya Bay occurs in 1853. Specific details about the magnitude and the impact of this event are scarce, but it is known directly through eyewitness accounts that a large wave was generated due to a landslide. So fitting our criteria of having something other than just the seismic activity producing a giant
Think about
wave.
all that damage just from one Stevie Nicks song.
One Stevie Nicks song.
I just got the death stare. I apologize.
I mean, that was a good reference. I'm not going to hate that one. So, moving ahead a couple decades to 1874, again in Lituya Bay, a mega tsunami was spawned by a massive landslide, and the locals would write in the newspapers that, quote, a substantial wave was formed. Again, we're just going to go with the fact that there is a theme occurring every time there's a massive landslide, a substantial or as described wave, so I'm going to presume those are mega tsunami-esque just because of the factors involved, but the 1899 mega tsunami in Lituya Bay is well documented. The event was associated with the September 1889 Yakutak Bay earthquakes, multiple, one of which registered 8.0, and one that is disputed as being between 7.4 and 8.6 on the Richter scale. The shaking from those earthquakes, again, causing massive landslides in Lituya Bay, which are going to inundate the shoreline with powerful waves. The 1889 quakes are also notable because they changed the geographical features of Alaska. There is subsidence and uplift in terms of how the coast and then the topography, both as it is underwater emerging to the beach and subsequent inland lines. Literally the ground lifted up and stayed up because of the way these plates slipped against each other.
Got it.
So the 1899 quake was so massive that it physically changed the land you're standing on.
Wow.
So evidence of these historical mega tsunamis, again, includes the high trim lines, debris deposits that are found significantly above the high tide line. So these physical markers indicate that the heights of these waves and the extent of the damage they brought with them. Now, studies in tree rings in the area have sort of corroborated this evidence because there is unusual growth patterns right around where the moments these waves are striking, so we can see it not just in the physical barren landscape or the rock face. We can also see it in the trees that have died and the growth patterns. They reflect this traumatic experience for the tree itself. So, in 1958, the Lituya Bay mega tsunami was extraordinarily powerful. It was a localized event, and it doesn't reach other distant locations such as Parker was just asking about, and that is because of the narrow and enclosed topography of the bay. When you consider how a lot of bays, going back to our own Chesapeake Bay, it starts very narrow, up in places near Baltimore and further north, and by the time it hits the Atlantic Ocean, it has spread out so far that you get that ocean experience where you cannot see across it anymore. Lituya Bay is the opposite. Lituya Bay is massive. It's widest that it is. That top of the T, so to speak, is at the inlandmost part of the bay. And as you funnel down to the bottom of the T, where the bay meets the coast, there's nearly a wall that sort of creates a bottleneck. So this doesn't just turn it into the microphone to blast the sound inland, but it also serves as a choke point for this massive wave. So the majority of the water that is sent out towards the ocean gets cut off by the steep cliffs of the fjord. But again, everything that it's hitting is totally obliterated. Wow. So with Lituya Bay and some of these other ones, a big question can be asked, will this happen again? The answer is most definitely yes. The region is geographically still very active. It's only a matter of time before another earthquake causes a landslide that's going to trigger another unfathomable wave in Lituya Bay.
How many people live there now, do you know?
I don't know. But what about some big waves, potential mega tsunamis, more recently than Lituya Bay in 1958?
Oh, tell me more.
Parker, was 1980 a good year for you?
1980 was probably the most significant year of my life.
Is that that's the year you were born?
That was the year I was born.
I know.
Yeah.
I was like,
I mean, if 1980 had turned out a little differently, you know,
and we
for
wouldn't
me,
even be here in this basement.
I mean,
everyone.
Yeah. I mean, it's butterfly effect.
So
right?
on May 18th, 1980, the upper 400 meters or 1,300 300 feet of Mount St. Helens is going to collapse, creating a landslide.
Right.
Which, by the way, I got to see a video finally of the mountain collapsing. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in my life. The entire mountain slides on itself.
Brief aside about that, about 1980 and Mount St. Helens is...
You were there?
No. But 1980 was a really bad year, just in general. Like, somebody gave me a card once, like a birthday card. It was like, oh, this is what happened in 1980.
I feel like we beat the Russians in hockey that year.
Maybe.
It's true.
But,
So you
but
better watch your tone.
But John
Miracle on
Lennon was
Ice.
killed. Mount St. Helens happened. It was
Yeah,
just
but
like a
we
list of
beat
all
the
these
Russians,
disasters.
and it made up for all that malarkey.
But then at the end of the birthday card, and you were born, and I was like, yeah, yay.
I'm not sure that those things all sequentially happened enough for the way that Herb Brooks's Miracle on Ice to have atoned for it. But you know what? It happened. 1980 was a baller year. Parker was born, and we beat the Russians.
That's pretty
At
good.
hockey.
That is
At
pretty
hockey.
I'll take it.
Yeah,
you know
we'll take
what?
it.
I'll take it.
So obviously Mount St. Helens, perhaps the most famous volcanic eruption since Pompeii in a lot of ways, where it's very famous for the volcanic part of the story, the pyroclastic flow part of the story. But a massive line of pressure and magma and the pyroclastic flow hits the water, hits the lake nearby. Let's see here, Spirit Lake, and it caused an 850-foot wave.
In a lake.
In a lake. Smaller than Matt's type of lakes, which are basically inland oceans.
That's true. Inland
So
seas.
I
yeah.
just
Oh,
picture.
I'm sorry, inland seas.
I just picture in my head a lake with a 150-foot wave, like all the water missing except for the middle, and it's just like all in the middle, stacked up on top of itself. That's crazy. 150-foot wave, man. That's in a lake.
100, 800.
I'm sorry, 800.
800 and nearly 1,000-foot tall wave getting produced in a lake.
Oh,
from the
that's even worse than
pyroclastic
I
flow.
thought.
Nope.
Yeah.
I thought you said 150. I'm sorry, 800.
Yeah, you
wow.
should be sorry, brother. No, but yeah,
Dude.
so 1980. But what if we go ahead about 20 years in Greenland in 2000? 90 million cubic meters of rock slide into what is it? I can't pronounce that. The Pawtoot. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Easy
I can't
for you
save
to
you on that
say.
one.
Dude, Greenland, help me. People from Greenland, chime in and tell us how to pronounce your words. Because the next word is, it's on the Nausak Peninsula. It's on Greenland's west coast, everyone, all right? I'm just going to abandon that. So this wave is moving at 87 miles an hour.
The pronunciation thing's
It's a
podcast.
164-foot tall wave. So that's a massive wave. 2015, another honorable mention, going back to Alaska in another one of these fjord situations, the Ton Ford. At 8:19 Alaska Daylight Time on October 17th, 2015, the side of a mountain collapsed, falling into, I guess, a finger of icy bay. That's not just because it's cold in Alaska. That's its official name. And it's going to produce an initial height of about 330 feet as far as the wave it creates.
This is a squeaky chair, folks. I don't know if you caught that or not. That was
Yeah, we should probably upgrade. We've upgraded everything else in the studio. We should
except
probably
for-
upgrade the chairs.
Except for especially my chair.
So here's what's crazy
I mean,
about
for
this.
context, I mean, if I fell into the water, I would cause a mega tsunami. So
Aww.
this chair might have to go.
So other places that report this wave over the next 12 minutes, they recorded moving a little slower at about 60 miles an hour, but they have other wave heights being registered as 328 feet, 330 feet, and then smaller heights as it reaches the furthest registered from this event, furthest registered distances of 98 and 66 feet. So you can see that in 2015, we're having these massive events. 2017, once again in Greenland, a wave that reaches 328 feet. Again, going back to that same unpronounceable area. And you'll notice in regions like Alaska and in Greenland, these are continuous stories because of the topography of the area. But I was pretty shocked to see that in 2020. In 2020, if that wasn't a year where there was enough chaos...
Right.
The people of Elliott Creek, British Columbia, over there in Canada, on November 28th, had an unseasonably heavy rainfall trigger a landslide in which 24 million cubic yards of material crashed into Glacial Lake at the head of Elliott Creek, which caused a 330-foot high mega tsunami.
Wow.
That went down the creek and the Southgate River to the head of the Butte Inlet, covering a total of 37 miles. And that event was generated by, the event itself, the wave generated a 5.0 earthquake and destroyed over, and this is sad for you naturalists out there, and it destroyed over 5.3 miles of salmon habitat along Elliott Creek.
Man.
Damn. Man for the fishes. So.
You said it was in BC? British Columbia?
Okay, because I was like, no, that happened in
No,
2020.
I'm sorry. I'm in British Columbia.
Yep. So,
Man.
what about future mega tsunamis, boys, as we start to get to the end of all things here?
Well, I guess it probably would be the end of all things if you were standing too close to one of these in the future.
British Columbia is on the radar for scientists for an unstable rock face at Mount Breckenridge, not Breckenridge. Breckenridge, more like B&E Ridge, Break-in-Ridge, which is on the north end of a giant freshwater fjord of Harrison Lake in the Fraser Valley community, which is in southwestern BC, British Columbia, Canada. It's been considered to be unstable enough to collapse into the lake, which will generate a mega tsunami that will outright destroy the town of Harrison Hot Springs. So if you live and are listening in Harrison Hot Springs, get out! Get out while you can! Go! But this is the next one that I'm going to kind of close out with, is one I kind of grew up knowing about. Partly because I got to watch a documentary like a lot of people did in the early 2000s when, we were really into our Discovery Channel documentaries and everything. I know phases we go through and don't grow out of. Some people grew out of that one. I didn't.
Nothing wrong with that.
I still love a good Discovery doc there. But this was the story of the Canary Islands, the volcanic ocean island La Palma, the eruption of the volcano Cumbre Vieja. When this volcano erupts in such a way, scientists predicted that it was going to cause such a significant portion of the volcanic mountain itself to collapse into the ocean that from the western coasts of Africa, where the Canary Islands are, that this wave would travel across the Atlantic Ocean and produce waves that were nearly 2,000 feet along the Atlantic seaboards of South, Central, and North America. So what is fact about that is Cumbre Vieja will, in time, explode, and it will cause a landslide, which will cause a tsunami that crosses the Atlantic and reaches the Atlantic seaboard. The best science available at the time was where that 2,000-foot wave estimation came from. This has since been reevaluated because we are living, despite what people believe on a daily basis, in a golden age of science, technology, and research. We are making exponential gains and leaps in understanding that kind of make the last several millennia look kind of quaint with how quickly we're learning things. So 20 years ago, this was going to be a 2,000-foot wave whenever this happened. And, by the way, a good documentary, it leaves you with, you're in the red zone. It could happen any day.
Nice.
We'll come to that in a minute. But so there was supposed to be this 2,000-foot wave coming. The reassessments of this region still confirm that this is going to happen. At some point, this volcano will explode, and it will cause a landslide that sends a tsunami to the east coast. But two things that changed.
I don't think I like it.
No, you should actually put on your better face because they changed for the better.
Oh, okay.
Made me a little more comfortable, especially when you consider that places like the Outer Banks were going to be like laughably eliminated on a 2,000-foot wave comes. And I'll be honest, maybe even with the wave that's coming, they might still get laughably eliminated. But
possibly.
Yeah, I'd rather take my chances with that one than what could have been. So science, and again,
5-inch wave.
200 feet. By the time it reaches the eastern seaboard.
That's still pretty bad.
Basically, science, right? We can't ever. Oh, well, I guess we can. You can definitively say a lot, but there's these things that science can tell you, like, we're super, 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 super sure of, but we're not 100% sure of it, right?
Right.
So in this capacity, they have concluded that it will not be a 2,000-foot wave. It'll be roughly about 200 feet, and that Cumbre Vieja is a lot more stable than they initially thought. They have pretty much said that in the next 10,000 years, this will not occur, which is super important because on September 19th, 2021, Cumbre Vieja started erupting again. And I hadn't researched this episode yet because we were still in like season 1 of this, so it wasn't on my mind. So without you knowing it, but as we're producing the first season, I'm having these small anxiety attacks.
That was season 2.
Was it 2?
Yeah, we started in 2020.
Did we?
We did, yeah.
We've been doing this a long time.
I have been.
Our first season was 2020. First Titanic episode was 2020.
Nice.
I remember making jokes.
He's
about
like, I remember it like it was yesterday.
I do.
Parker's like the guy that peaked in high school. Parker's just still in season 1. Was like, we talked about Titanic, man.
Yeah.
He did really good on that episode.
Well, thank you very much.
We should come back to it so we don't have to keep talking about that one.
That one.
That one. You know, we will, because we did say that we're not going to do it now, but there's obviously the very famous...
Surprise! White Star 3 is right now.
The very famous tragedy that occurred with
music.
Titanic, but there's a lot of legitimate stuff to come back to, so I imagine at some point sooner than later we'll be back. But let's talk about Cumbre Vieja again. So here's what's going to happen. This is directly out of one of the science reports. That sounds so vague. For my notes, I have a
science report.
I have a master document with all my citations, and then I have like my show document just so I could quickly get through things.
I know.
I didn't transfer this like a dummy, but this is directly out of one of the scientific...
I want your citations, Pat.
Oh, you can get it. We can footnote. This is footnoted. But it says, quote, "It is likely that several eruptions would be required before failure would occur on Cumbre Vieja. The western half of the volcano has an approximate 500 cubic kilometers or 120 cubic miles that are estimated to fall into the sea, which is 1.5 trillion metric tons. So this is going to be more impact in the water than potentially the Chesapeake Bay impact event, right? So that's what they're estimating. But what does it mean? So it's going to generate potentially... In the initial, right at the island, it's going to create a wave that is 3,300 feet. So right at the initial point of impact, 3,300-foot wave is going to begin. And by the time it has traveled across the ocean, waves 200 feet high are going to slam into the Caribbean and eastern North American seaboard when it hits about 8 hours later.
Sounds like it's going to obliterate the Caribbean.
Tens of millions of lives are going to be lost between St. John's, Halifax, Boston, New York, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Miami, Havana, and the rest of the eastern coast of the United States and Canada, as well as other cities on the Atlantic coast in Europe, South America, and Africa. But again, up for vigorous debate when this is going to happen, because science has basically said it was going to be soon and then not for 10,000 years. So people are still studying this. But that one...
Well... I mean, may I just say, the way things are going, that's probably not going to happen until next Saturday.
Right. The day I leave for the beach.
Yeah.
Thanks. So, again, the idea is currently being debated by geologists, but most tend to agree that it does not suggest an imminent collapse. Quote, "Indeed, it seems to be geologically impossible right now. The region conjectured as prone to collapse is too small and too stable to collapse within the next 10,000 years." So... helps me sleep a little bit better at night, fellas. So Hawaii and Norway are other places where historical mega tsunamis leave physical scars all over the place. Matt, I know you've been there before. Mm-hmm. Parker, you been there?
No.
I've never been there. I imagine you've seen it without even knowing it, the scars of tsunamis of this caliber.
Well, and it's part of the culture there, too. I mean,
big wave?
Well, yeah, the Hawaiian cultures there talk about the big waves that'll come in and wreak havoc, and it's part of their mythology and cultural heritage. It is very interesting.
Do they surf them?
100%.
Yeah, because one thing I learned from an early surf movie, so we're gonna close with just some fun about big waves in movies here in a second.
And I do have a question
for you. The Humunga Cowabunga from Down Under, are you familiar?
Wow.
Obviously, it's Australian, but
right.
There's like a lot of weird Hawaiian and Polynesian influence in the movie. But they're surfing a wave that's like 200 feet tall, bro. Maui could do it. God, I'm so excited for Moana too.
Wow.
I can tell.
So I actually have a question about the future of since we know the future of these things, right?
It's coming.
I think it was you and me, Pat, who were having this discussion a couple of years ago. I was saying to Pat. It's not like I'm a huge. I love like Wyoming and Idaho. The whole like.
Why?
Huh?
I don't know.
Well, we were discussing this.
I mean,
Idaho wants to be inland.
Idaho gives us potatoes.
Right.
So that makes sense.
Even though Idaho and Wyoming, I'm talking about like the what's that? The national park, Yellowstone. The Yellowstone National Park region is what I'm referring to.
Not a big one. Not a super famous one at all. Not a super famous
one at all. But no, that region right there, while it's quite a bit inland, the question I have for you is, I just remember we were talking about this at the time. you said something like, I don't want to go out there. The whole place is a volcano.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've been there. It's so beautiful. It's so nice. And the mountains are so beautiful. Like, no, it's a volcano. The whole thing's going to explode.
Yeah, I don't want to die.
Right. So, because for those who don't know, it's not built. I mean, yeah, they built it right on top. No, but it's basically right on top of this huge volcanic structure. When a volcano like that explodes, will that? I mean, other than just the pyroclastic flow,
yes,
would something like that would cause a mega tsunami? I would assume
that is a globe-changing event.
Okay,
yeah,
so
I'm not certain how it would cause a mega tsunami being that far inland, but maybe the pressure wave or something like that.
Oh, brother, the historical text, the movie 2012, shows us that this does shake the earth in such a way that the oceans shake. And that causes water displacement. So I am both being humorous, but
I was going to say
one of the things that when I saw that movie, and again, when I see a lot of these movies, I want to go, what is straight up Hollywood?
And what
it doesn't just
real?
apply to the stitches and buttons on a coat or the tactics or the way they use rifles in movies, guys. This is something I do. It's like, well, how do they know the wave would be that big or whatever? So I like to look into that stuff.
But like we look at things like the San Andreas Fault, the threat of that just basically falling into the ocean.
That will probably cause a localized event.
I would say that would be probably more than just a localized.
Again, the historical text of Escape from L.A. with Kurt Russell shows us. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, Kurt Russell is, of course, the man. I mean, he has the best last name.
All right, so when I get into... Oh, you're not biased or anything. So when I get into this subject, and it's not just my, standing on the beach, doom and glooming about, standing there like, again, Taya Leone in Deep Impact with this massive wave.
This is the guy, he goes on vacation to go to the beach to relax and stand there on the
himself.
Beach. Yeah.
It's scared
Dude,
I
love, it's like one of this weird, I don't know if it's masochistic or not, but I enjoy scaring myself.
Yeah.
Like
I am
terrified of gray aliens, right? Like super rational, whether you believe in them or not. It's just a stupid fear that I've carried my whole life. And when you read about alien abductions, it's always...
Dude, if I saw a gray, I'd be pretty scared too.
Right. Right. But like, there are these stories about alien abductions are always like, dude driving alone in this mountainous road in this terrible conditions, or the sun is down, or it's foggy and rainy. And for my job, I volunteer for the shift that sends me out into the mountainous roads that are foggy and rainy and dark by myself. And all I do while I'm out there on those runs is listen to alien abduction podcasts. So I am like constantly driving around like, oh man, like I'm super vigilant. So that's probably helping me do my job better. But same thing. I go to the beach. I hang out with my family, crack open a couple beers with my wife. We're enjoying a nice Leinenkugel, enjoying the summer shandy, the breeze. My kids are running around. It's just very beautiful environment. I got if you know me, I have a very thought out and thorough beach playlist I've built over the years. Come at me. The art of the mixtape is still alive.
Of course it is.
And you will settle into this vibe. And at a certain point, my wife will take a nap. The kids will do the thing where they take that nap on the beach. It'll be just me. And my body is too broken to make a damn sandcastle, so I don't do that. And maybe I'll pick up some seashells. But at a certain point, I do the dad thing, and I end up standing in the surf with my beer, just staring out at the water. And if I get past Jaws, I immediately am like, what if the wave came? And it just happens. That's probably why I did this, just so I could like cathartically get it out of my system before I go to the beach. But I came to being irrationally afraid of these mega tsunamis through Hollywood.
Sure.
So a lot of films come to mind immediately when I consider this story. I think of, and I've referenced it a bunch, the movie Deep Impact, which I love for a lot of reasons. Not just its cheese factor, but there's some legitimately fun things in it, but just... Normally, like, let's look at Armageddon, for instance, right? Another asteroid film coming out in the era where there's 2 versions of every movie coming out.
Right.
So in that movie, they have a very, very limited size comet that strikes in, like, France, but it doesn't do much to the overall planet. And then they successfully blow up the Earth Killer, and it's like, woo, Bruce Willis was the man, and everybody else, yeah, great, Ben Affleck, whatever, cool, Liv Tyler, awesome, whatever. Deep Impact... They split the asteroid, except they create a small asteroid that they can't stop from hitting Earth. So the big one that would have destroyed the whole planet, we're safe. But a globe changer is still coming. And so in the movie Deep Impact, they still take a massive asteroid strike. And again, there is scenes where that asteroid is like going from the Virginia Beach area, the wave rather, all the way up into the Appalachian Mountains, which again is probably inspired by somebody on that film production being aware of the Chesapeake Bay run.
Probably.
But there are great scenes as Frodo, before he's Frodo, Elijah Wood in this
Right.
movie. Lily Sobieski, just to date myself. If you don't know that name, your back probably doesn't hurt.
Oh, yeah, okay. all
Yeah.
right, yeah.
They were super famous in the 90s, and then I don't know what happened to them in terms of A-list stuff, but they were the the young protagonists of the film, and they are jet setting on a dirt bike to get out of there, and they're on top of like a mountain, and they have this great big scene where you can see this wide shot of this super tsunami, and it's like coming over like parts of West Virginia. And you're like, oh my God, like that wave's so far inland. So I got afraid of that. And then, I saw The Abyss, and The Abyss has that huge tidal wave. My old buddy Jim Cameron,
Oh, yeah.
right before he
yeah.
made your movie,
Yeah.
he was making movies
Oh, yeah,
about
he
aliens.
made it for me.
Aliens and Navy SEALs in
yeah.
the deep. Matt, you know what you're actually afraid of in The Abyss? Aliens and Navy SEAls. Because that's what's in that movie.
That's true.
But the aliens send a tidal wave, a mega tsunami, and then what's even more lunchbox about it is they freeze the mega tsunami. It like pauses right at the coast because Ed Harris saves the day, and the aliens are like, good job. And so they rewind the wave. But I had this vivid image of this wave approaching the coast, and that's, I think, the one that's in my mind when I'm standing there doing my weird dad stuff. And then, let's see, The Day After Tomorrow has a massive wave. The movie 2012 has a massive wave. San Andreas has a massive wave.
Yeah.
And then if you ever watch the original Sci-Fi Channel before it turned into whatever it became, and then later became True TV.
Oh, you mean like the sci-fi movie, whatever?
But they used to show those endless, like, Bruce Campbell, Shannon
Yeah.
Doherty movies.
Yeah.
Like,
By the way,
Category 9.
Shannon
Yeah,
Doherty.
R.I.P. Shannon Doherty.
Yeah.
But, like, Category 9 hurricane-style movies. But in those movies, there's, like, 2,000-foot-tall tidal waves left and right.
Right.
So, like, I've just been surrounded by these, like, well-done and poorly done massive waves on film and TV in my life. And I've just been so obsessed with, like, what if one happened and I got to see it? Like, when I have nightmares at night that are irrational, because the ones that are rational I will keep to myself. They involve things like my family
Sure.
and my
Sure.
world, jobs, country, things
yeah.
like that. But when I have dreams at night that are just straight up irrational, it's like, what is that bright light? Are they in my house thinking about my little gray friends? Or I can't tell how many times I've woken up in the middle of the night because, like, I had the, like when you shake and wake up, because, like, I was dreaming about a wave hitting my house.
I
Like
gotta
some
tell you,
stupid
I
shit
have
like that.
I have a confession to make. That little gray guy you're dreaming about that's in your house,
is it
it's
you?
me.
It's
Damn
literally
it.
just
I've been
Parker.
in your basement since 2021.
I know, Parker. Don't tell them how long you've been chained here.
Listen, send help. Matt, you work for the CIA.
No, he
Can't you
doesn't.
do
No, he
something?
doesn't. Remember, Parker?
Oh.
Shh. No, he doesn't.
But you promised me.
They
you promised me 4 years ago, if I kept quiet, that you would give me a peanut butter sandwich.
The CIA literally said to you, they're not here to save you.
And
They're here just to make sure we don't talk,
oh,
which is ironic because we host a podcast. So
yeah, they didn't see the microphones sitting
right.
around.
So I turn this over to you, Matt. Mega tsunamis, definitely historical, not just something that
Definitely.
Hollywood made up.
Right.
Do you have a greater appreciation for them, knowing that they're a lot more recent in time than just relating to the dinosaurs? Are you now afraid of what's on the water versus what's under it?
I've always had an appreciation for tsunamis because we've seen them in our lifetime and the damage
Yeah.
they can do. I mean, even some massive ones hitting Sri Lanka and things of that
Yeah.
nature, massive loss of life. So this concept of a mega tsunami, something
We're not talking like the one on our screen right now. Look at that. There's an oil rig on our screen right now.
No,
Look,
not anymore.
gone.
Goodbye.
Oil rig, just gone.
Goodbye.
Like that, instantaneously gone.
All right. So this concept of the tsunami is terrifying to begin with, but the mega tsunami that just there's nothing you can do about it.
Where do you hide?
Right, exactly. It's
Where,
just
where would you hide, Matt?
it's just going to sweep the land. Honestly,
yeah.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would
You
just
be on the beach with me?
I would be on the I would scream defiance into that wave right before I'm
Would you
annihilated.
hold me like Taya Leone's
No.
dad? You bastard. He wouldn't comfort. You heard it here first.
The only
Matt Borders
reason-
would not comfort me
Well,
as I
the only
freaked
reason
out.
I wouldn't is because I would still be chained into this desk.
Parker, we give you the best shot. You're hundreds of miles from the coast at this point.
I know, but
Actually,
like,
not hundreds.
No, I'm like
From
I'm
Ocean
within
City?
the kill zone.
Let's ask live on the air. How far away are we from Ocean City?
Not far enough to save Parker's life.
I am 169 miles by car from Ocean City. Oh, Ocean City, New Jersey.
Jersey.
My phone knows me so well
It knows it.
that even though I love the state of Maryland, I am preferential to Ocean City, New Jersey 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
Honestly, it has nothing to do with Bruce. It's just
Oh,
a
really?
nicer experience for your family.
Oh. Can I ask you a question? Like
If it's about Ocean City, no.
No, this is about the topic of the podcast here.
Great.
So, Megatsunami hits the East Coast of the United States.
Yeah.
Think about the impact. Like, we have a low point in our area. We got access to water, right?
Penobscot, by the way, obliterated.
Oh yeah, that's gone.
Like your whole ancestral
gone.
homelands. If it hits St. John's and Halifax, you're done.
Oh yeah, we're gone. So,
Kadunsky.
speaking of the Penobscot
No more Maine.
and its attached river, I was thinking of picture what the Potomac River and like at that point, like the impacts on like the Shenandoah River and the Antietam River.
Yeah.
Think about
Creek.
the impacts like when if one of those mega tsunamis were to hit the East Coast, like say up Maryland, it would have an access to like a low point. So those places that are closer to the Potomac would even be
Oh, dude.
probably even more obliterated.
I mean, if you've driven anywhere along from D.C. up to the American Legion Bridge, you can see that there's a funnel of topography that the water could travel
Sure.
up.
Yeah.
And again, Parker, going back to the historical document that is the movie 2012, the wave does come up the Potomac River. It does.
Oh, it does?
There's an aircraft carrier, the USS John F. Kennedy, lands on President Danny Glover as he's in front of like the Lincoln Memorial. It's a pretty wild scene. Look, it's a good movie. I'm not saying it's
for
like
the
the
record-
greatest movie or intellectually super deep, but it's a disaster film.
For the
You're
record, I was
not
actually-
watching those movies to get educated.
I was actually asking. I had not seen that.
Really?
Yeah, I hadn't seen that one.
Dude, it's 2024. That movie's old. That movie actually came out in 2010.
Yeah, it did.
You got to get on it.
But no,
John Cusack saved the world. That's all you need to know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I figured. I mean, that's what happens. But no, I mean, I mean, just like this whole topic is very just like, because like you said, Matt, what do you do? Where do you go?
Look, I'm afraid of drowning. So if this massive wave's coming at me, it's going to annihilate me before I can drown. So
Sure.
that's fine.
Sure.
I also think the pressure wave moving in front of that wave is going to take us out before we ever get wet.
Probably.
Like, that's something that like I'm not
Oh yeah, I guess
super
so.
sure of, but just the basic science and understanding about how like wind and sound and pressure move ahead of physical things.
Sure.
Like, a wall of water moving that powerfully with that much water and mass to it is going to be displacing air, much like it was displaced, and you're probably going to get crushed to death by the barometric pressure change before anything happens.
Probably.
Probably turn to dust. Nobody on the Titan submersible drowned, right?
No, correct.
Right.
That is
Similar
correct.
kind of concept, right? Something that's other than what you would expect. So, anyway, I hope as you go to the beach this summer that you're thinking about it now. I hope we did our jobs, and I hope your summers were going well, and now you're taking this seriously. Protect your families. Move out of Alaska. Move away from Hawaii.
Spend your entire Maine vacation on top of Mount Katahdin and hope for the best.
Move to the interior. Don't do that. There's tornadoes there. Maybe we'll come
If
to
you move
those
to the
one day.
interior, you'll get Yellowstone, and then you'll die that way.
I think to wind this down in all seriousness, one of the things I took away from exploring my irrational fear and trying to bring a legitimate conversation to our listeners today was just a renewed appreciation for the power that Mother Earth possesses. As we are doing our very best as humanity to hurt and potentially kill Mother Earth has the absolute ability to not just fight back,
Wipe
but
us out.
end the conversation itself.
Yeah.
And you'll see this, and again, we won't explore it, we won't soapbox, but science is science, and your opinion is much like another part of your body, whatever. But, you know, things are getting hotter, storms are getting stronger, winters are getting more violent in places, things like that. And
the sun is currently trying to kill everyone in Maryland.
well, no, it's July, and so Maryland is closer to the sun than the rest of the planet. And people don't realize this, but Maryland actually leaves the planet.
Yeah.
It floats out to like where Mercury is.
It's getting closer to heaven.
Just
right?
to check on
Yeah, it's just
Mercury.
elevating.
Because we're going out there to be like, Mercury, are you okay? And then we just get hot in the process. That's a Maryland summer.
You know, but
Mercury goes crazy.
Right, exactly.
But
so
it's happening in Maine too. Like
no.
it's-
And again, and you were talking about it on
100%.
our mid-year episode, right? We were talking about your beach trip, and
Sure.
that you were talking about waters that are normally like August hot, and
Yeah.
you went in like early June. things like that. So again, not soapboxing, but like Mother Earth is strong, very capable of handling themselves, and she will hit the reset button when she needs to. And as we have seen, it's not just asteroids that can cause this. It can be Mother Earth's own shaking, which creates, these effects of landslides and volcanic activity that can produce unfathomably large waves that I will dream about tonight as I go into post-production and editing for this. But
Right.
anyway, I just wanted to do something different for our listeners because I'm sure that in 5 years of listening to this show, you're pretty ready to hear us talk about movements on a battlefield, political landscapes, the ways that these stories we tell impact society, cool themes that transcend history. But I bet you we're not expecting us to talk about things like the dinosaurs or asteroids or tidal waves, and yet these are historical events. And I thought it would be fun to kind of...
The dinosaurs are history.
They are.
That's true.
They are.
They are.
You have to believe in them. If you don't believe in the dinosaurs, bro, I got news for you.
I believe in dinosaurs.
Okay, good.
Why
You want to get out of this desk? You want to do another 4 more years in here?
What do I have to say to get unchained?
We'll talk about it off mic.
Crap.
That's right.
I believe in dinosaurs. Can I go?
That's right. So anyway, I just thought that'd be a lot of fun, and I'm glad you boys allowed me the opportunity to explore that. Hopefully, you guys had some fun, learned a few things, had some laughs, and I hope you guys are going to enjoy the rest of your summers as well as you guys are listeners out there. I hope that you're not actually panicking standing on the beach with your families. I hope you're soaking up the sun and enjoying a relative amount of peace because Lord knows we all need it. There's a lot coming up as we move into the rest of this summer. The July Blitz was incredible. We dropped the ball wholly on social media. We might try to do some penance and do some posting about it, but we've released 3 episodes in like 15 days and didn't talk about it. And you guys are still downloading those. So that was an absolutely incredible thing to see, that we could lose ourselves in the moments of our careers and families in the middle of summer, and you guys would be there to pick us up like you always have. So thank you for that. Really hope you've enjoyed getting into the second half where we've covered the Battle of Monocacy. We've talked to, and that was with Tracy Evans from the battlefield there. We've talked to Gary Edelman, legendary Civil War historian, about one of his earliest works, The Myth of Little Round Top. So he explored a story that is not just about Chamberlain and not just about soldiers from Maine. Sorry, not sorry, Parker. And then we got to end our Blitz with Kyle Dalton talking about a family quite literally divided by the topics and concepts of the American Civil War, not just in ideology, but by a physical road.
Yep. And promote the great site at Union Mills.
That's right, exactly, which we try to get connected to as many local things as within striking distance of our studio as is possible, and that one's basically in our backyard. So moving out of the Blitz, you guys have just wrapped up a really neat collaboration we did with the girls from the Ill-Equipped History podcast. They are fans of a show called This Paranormal Life. That's how we discovered their show. We ended up listening and found out that they were fantastically passionate storytellers and reached out and said, hey, do you have a story that you wouldn't mind telling for our listeners? And they brought the thunder.
They did.
Battle of Athens, never heard of it before, and now I'm like ashamed that I never knew this story.
It's a great story.
It's impactful, it's powerful, and honestly, it resonates into the 21st century incredibly strongly. So if you haven't go back and listen to our first episode this month here in August, again, with the girls from the Ill-Equipped History podcast. But coming up next, boys, we're staying with the water theme.
We are.
But we're coming to a lot more of a rational discussion. Not talking about gigantic mega tsunami waves, but there are big waves in this story.
Mm-hmm.
But
we are
going back to our shipwreck roots.
And a word that translates to big sea wave. Or big C.
Is that Gitchigumi?
That is Gitchigumi. Actually, it is
Nailed
pronounced.
it.
Actually, it is pronounced probably more appropriately, Kitchikume. And the E sound is probably not a long E sound. It's probably more like an like an I.
Listen,
like,
Gordon Lightfoot said
Yeah.
Gitchigumi.
But he also said early.
Okay, you're right.
So
that's fair. And we're gonna get into that. So let's do
he
that.
needed to rhyme with early.
That's right. You're right. I know. So we are going to discuss the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, perhaps the most famous shipwreck on the planet
Great
that
Lakes.
isn't.
Oh, thank you.
Didn't even get to finish. We took such offense to that. I didn't even get to finish my time. The most famous shipwreck on the planet that isn't the Lusitania or the Titanic.
All right.
You ready? Is that acceptable?
The Britannic might fall in there.
You think Britannic is more famous?
Let's just keep it on the Great Lakes then.
All right, I'm not. I'm confident in my statement. Matt can be a little more humble about it as the Great Laker. That's the only official.
The Great Laker.
He's the only official voice. He's got a badge that says, I'm from Michigan.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
You didn't see that? Dude,
that's great.
He literally, biggest flex that you guys don't see as a listener on this show is we sit down to press record and Matt puts his badge and gun on the table and both say, I'm from Michigan.
I promise you that is not true.
What's crazy is Matt always likes to point.
Shaped like Michigan.
Matt always likes to point. It says safety off.
It's shaped like the Upper Peninsula.
They're not bullets. They're just
how it
facts
works.
about Michigan.
Yes.
And they all come out in the voice of Tim Allen, pure Michigan. So anyway.
Oh, that's right. He's from Michigan.
That's right. And he's the voice of the tourism campaign. So whatever it happens,
really?
it's pure Michigan. But it's Tim Allen. But so we got an episode coming up that we're really excited about with Rich Napolitano from the Shipwrecks and Sea Dogs podcast. So he's going to be our lead storyteller and taking us through the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Of course, on his own show, he did a wonderful episode, and he's been kind enough to come and bring that storytelling skill to you, our listener. We are then going to be exploring the song that probably made us familiar with this story. Parker will be telling you about how Gordon Lightfoot needed to rhyme with early, and thus changed our and changed our lives. So we'll be covering the history of the Edmund Fitzgerald, plus lots more as we wind down our season 5 here. So I am super ready to go to the beach now. I think I feel a little more chill about the big waves, knowing that Cumbre Vieja is not going to explode in my lifetime, in the sense that it will cause a landslide that sends a 200 or 2,000 foot wave my way. But I was kind of tripping out in 2021 when it started erupting, and I didn't learn this yet. I was like, is this coming? Like, we've had murder hornets, pandemic, all this other stuff, cicadas, right? Don't bring up the cicadas. And then, like, potentially a wave. So 2020 and 2021 were kind of a wild set of years for me. I changed my career, though.
Yeah.
It really wasn't anything else. It was the fear of Cumbre Vieja that made me go, I need to change my careers. Time is short. I should be happy.
There you go.
Anyway, I love you guys. You guys put up with a lot from us, and we are very grateful for it. Thank you again for watching our From the Field series. It was really awesome, as Matt likes to say, to get out on grounds, be on the field where these events took place, take you along in the event that you're not able to get there yourself. So thank you for supporting that. Following us online, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube by searching for the History Things podcast is a good way to keep up with all the malarkey that we pull here on the show from time to time. And then, obviously, if you are looking for ways to help the show, for which we are eternally grateful, the best things you can do, as you have always done, are leave those 5-star ratings and reviews on your favorite podcast apps. We will be launching on YouTube Music soon, because I didn't realize that when Google Podcasts went away, boys, they basically moved everything over operations-wise to YouTube Music. So YouTube Music has a significant podcast offering. So if you are not seeing us there, just hold on. I'm going to figure that one out soon.
We'll be soon.
But anyway, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Matt's going to get out of here. Parker will not. He's probably here for the duration, so we'll see about when we let you out. But for my producer today, Parker Russell, for my co-host, Matt Borders, I'm your co-host, Pat McGuire. This has been the History Things podcast saying we will catch you all later!
Have a good night.